بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We are reading Beginning of Guidance by Imam Al-Ghazali, page 130. The etiquette of the scholar. If you are a scholar, then the manners of a scholar that you must have are ample tolerance, keeping to forbearance, gravity and a dignified bearing when in the company of people, refraining from showing haughtiness toward any slave of Allah, except for tyrants, as a deterrent to their oppressive behavior, preferring a lowly status in gatherings and meetings, avoidance of jesting and making jokes, gentleness with the student, showing patience and equanimity with the student or questioner who is haughty, correcting the dull-witted with excellent guidance and not becoming annoyed with them, not to be too proud to say, "I don't know," devoting your full attention to the questioner and genuinely attempting to understand his question, fully accepting another's proof in a debate, submitting to the truth and returning to it when you realize you are wrong, preventing the student from learning any branch of knowledge that will harm him, deterring the student from desiring, in his pursuit of the useful knowledge, anything other than the countenance of Allah Most High, and preventing the student from occupying himself with the communal obligations before he has completed his individual obligations. His own primary individual obligation is to rectify his outward and inward with consciousness of Allah, taking account of himself first, so that the student may follow him in the actions first and benefit from his words second.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah, bismillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wa ala. Allahumma, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with ilm nafi' and beneficial knowledge, and bless us to be people of adab and who have manners inwardly and outwardly. And may Allah ta'ala cement these etiquettes in us such this is how we are, and fixate them in us, ya arhamar rahimeen. So inshallah ta'ala, that if we kind of look at the schedule, how many more Rawhas do we have before Ramadan? So we have today, Wednesday, next week, and next Wednesday. So, oh wait, there's none on Monday. So we have 3, and then we have one on the Monday after that. So we have 4 Rawhas left. Okay, so we're going to read a little bit quicker because I want to finish this, because we want to start a new book after Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala. A lot of these etiquettes are self-explanatory. It's more about putting them into practice. So we'll be moving a little bit faster than normal, but that doesn't mean that this isn't important. These etiquettes are really important. And so that here he says the etiquette of a scholar, but this also applies to a person of knowledge, a person who's in a position of teaching. And that how should they be? Is the very first thing that he mentions is what? Ample tolerance, and that keeping to forbearance. Okay, so sa'at al-ihtimal. Ihtimal is where you can bear hardship. It's impossible to be involved in community work if you don't have the ability to bear hardship. And sometimes there's not really a solution. It's just listen, be there for people, and bear it on their behalf. And I remember learning the meanings of tahammal or ihtimal in Mauritania, where this one time we were traveling from one place to another, and they have these trucks with open beds. And so they fit 3 people in the front, maybe pack more. And then it's an open bed where they have everybody's luggage, and they put a net over it. And then they probably have 15, 20 people that are on top of all of the luggage on the open bed truck. And you're going through the desert and they're driving fast and they're swerving around, and it's not a paved road. So it's you are holding on for dear life, okay? And the netting, it's like rope. So it's not super soft, right? And it's your hands are hurting, right? And it's this goes on for 2, 3, 4 hours or longer. And so I remember being on the back of one of these trucks, and you're oh my God, what's going to happen to me? And you're just holding on for dear life. And it's you're uncomfortable, you're hot, it's crowded, your hands are hurting, but you can't let go. And that's what tahammul or ihtimal is. When we talk about bearing, that's it. That's the meaning. You can't let go. If you let go, it's dangerous. You're going to fall off the car. You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to bump into. You can't let go. You're just holding on for dear life. And it's hard. And you sometimes don't have even opportunity to. And then the car stops for a little bit. And but while the car is going, hour, 2 hours, you're holding on. That's what it means to be involved in this dawah, in this work. You're just bearing things. There's not. You're in a situation you can't ask the driver to stop. They're not going to stop for you, right? You can't let go. You're uncomfortable, but it's just like bear it and hold on. That's it. That's the meaning. And وهكذا. So that is something that, again, we're supposed to encourage people to want to do service when they get older, those type of things. Yeah, they don't necessarily encourage people. It's just to indicate the reality. This is the reality of the work. It's the hardest work of all. And that it has the potential for people to be the most critical. And it does have some perks, which the nafs you're not allowed to even want. So it's just you got your nafs in a grip and then khalas. But it's the work of the prophets, wahakada. And ajib. So anyhow, ample tolerance in keeping to forbearance. Okay, so then there's hilm. Okay, and hamala ihtimal is closely related to hilm linguistically. It's just switching of the lam and alif. And the quintessential trait of the prophets is hilm, that forbearingness. This is the quintessential trait, clemency. And al-afwan al-maqdira. People wrong you, but you just forgive. Khalas. And wahakada. طيب. And then he says here, gravity and a dignified bearing when in the company of people. What does it mean by gravity? The way we carry ourselves. Is that you're not just laughing and joking all the time and just you're never serious. Hakada. Right? So there's a way that we carry ourselves, especially if we're in a position of, and it doesn't mean that we are hard to access. It doesn't mean that we're not lighthearted. No, you can be lighthearted and still have this. Our teachers are the most gentle of people, and everything has its time and place. There's time where you lower the guard, and there's time where you relax. And moments of relaxation, by all means, right? Tell jokes and have fun and things like that. How could that? But everything has its time, and put everything in its proper place. Refraining from showing haughtiness towards any servant of Allah, okay, meaning that someone with knowledge can very easily think that they're better than someone else. Even if you start to get a little bit of knowledge, you start noticing other people's mistakes. And it's very easy to see yourself as better than others. Check yourself. And don't think you're better than, and don't even think you're better than a dog. And the only that exception there is other people who are arrogant. Tyrants and other arrogant people. You can show arrogance to an arrogant person to that have them come down for their arrogance. So sometimes it's the right thing to do when someone's very arrogant and they treat you a certain way, is to be firm. Right? And when it means here showing arrogance to an arrogant person doesn't mean that you actually think you're better than them outwardly. That you just be firm with people and let them know that you're not a pushover. And other people might give in to the arrogance that they're showing, but right? You show a different side of yourself. That's oftentimes the right thing to do. While internally having your heart be free from thinking that you're better than people. Preferring a lowly status in gatherings and meetings. Right, you're fine. People call you to the front, they don't call you to the front. They acknowledge you or they don't acknowledge you. It doesn't matter. And I used to remember that our teacher, Dr. Umar Farooq Abdullah, may Allah bless him, so whenever he would attend like a program or like a conference, he would be in almost every single session. And he would be there taking notes. And he was usually much older than many of the people presenting. Whether they were close to his age or whether they were significantly younger, he would be there and he'd be taking notes. This is the proper way to do things, is to benefit from other people. And that even if people be younger than you, even if people be less knowledgeable than you. Okay, gentleness with the students. Okay, it's important to be gentle with the students. Not where you open up the doors for the students to not do their homework or that be late to class or that not come to class or that not excel in their studies. No, you have to have a little bit of, the administration, that's their job. I mean, Dada Musta, we're very easy on our students here. Like in traditional schools, right? They don't have the leeway that we give students here. It's like there's a bottom line. Okay, you don't get certain test scores, you don't have certain attendance. There's so many people waiting outside to be in your position. So they have to give precedence to the people who are going to really take this seriously and to really value it. So, but aside from those things that require disciplinary action, like is the case in any situation, whether you're at home, whether you're at a school, or whether you're at work, you can't just go through life and do whatever it is that you want to do. It's always amazing people think that because it's Islamic education or because it's an Islamic nonprofit, all the other rules that normally apply in all the other institutions and other experiences, it's just a masjid, it's just a musalla, it's just an Islamic organization, it's just a seminary, who cares? We can miss class and be gone and be late and not do our work, and it's no big deal. That's a sign that we don't understand what we're doing in this work. We should self-impose the highest of standards on our own selves before the administration. Administration's job is to make sure everything's in order and that type of thing, because everything has an impact. And once you open up that door, you even see it. You don't have the same energy level now that you did when you first came in. The first month or two is fine, but then you come back from a break and it takes a while to get the momentum going again. There's ups and downs and ebbs and flows. It's natural when it comes to studying. But ideally, we should not let the state of other students or the general feeling affect us. What we want is diligence from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and be committed and dedicated. You're a human being. You're going to have your moments, so don't be too hard on yourself. But put everything in its proper place. Maintain a nice, healthy balance, and that we're here to support. And this is where the gentleness comes in that regard. That's the proper way to understand this. Now, correcting the dull-witted with excellent guidance and not becoming annoyed with them. So students will pick up at different paces. Look at the beautiful statement that was just Ustad Hassan quoted recently in the Mawlid. He said 40 times that Imam al-Shafi'i, right, that his students, subhanAllah, he didn't understand. Then he goes to his house until he understands 40 times. Subhanallah. He repeated the same, and this is the patience that's required. This is the job of the teacher, is to interact and treat the students like their own children. And then never being too proud to say, I don't know. If you don't know something, khalas. We should not ever be hesitant to say, I don't know. No. And then he points here too, that the importance of sincerity in this regard. But then also too is that, as he says here, is that submitting to the truth and returning it to when you realize you are wrong. So someone realizes they're wrong, they admit. I was wrong on this. Oh, this is the correct position. Oh, I made a mistake here. This is the correct way to understand it. Hakada. No. And then preventing the student from occupying himself with the communal obligations before he has completed his individual obligations. His own primary individual obligation is to rectify his outward and inward with consciousness of Allah, taking account of himself first, so that the student may follow him in actions first, benefiting from his example, and benefit from his words second. So when we talk about these meanings, Imam al-Ghazali mentioned this 950 years ago. So when we tell you that this is the number one obligation of the student, we're not making this up right off the top of our head. Imam al-Ghazali is saying this over 900 years ago. He's saying this is the number one priority of a student, is to rectify their inward and outward state with taqwa of Allah. This is the number one priority. And it's not always mutual exclusive. You can be doing other things at the same time, but this is the number one priority. There are individual obligations that we have to learn and things that we have to do. And then once you start that process, then of course you're preparing yourself. The more knowledge you have, the more pure you become, the more skills that you have, the more you're going to be able to benefit other people, right? But it's all done from this platform of first and foremost having taqwa in and of yourself. So this is the guidance. And again, people are putting this into question now where they think that there's not really any use. This is a waste of time, right? Get out there and do things, right? Right. Even in that, I have this toothpaste at home where it's like wake up, brush your teeth, make change. It's like, okay, I get the idea of like, okay, you got to wake up, and you know everyone's probably seen that video where that military guy said, make your bed and this type of thing, and like accomplish something as soon as you wake up. That's a good thing. Wake up, make your bed. There's something to be said. Yeah, brush your teeth is also a good idea. And so there's something to be said for doing something. But yeah, this jump to like, wake up, brush your teeth, make change. This whole idea that, you know, these tropes out there. It's like, go out and do something. Go out and change the world. Yani, yes, there's some truth in that, but you got to understand it correctly. The greatest way you can change the world is by changing yourself. The greatest way you can change the world is by changing yourself. And then from the platform of actively working to constantly change and transform yourself for the better so you emulate the Prophet ﷺ. Yani, you could also say, you can only truly change the world to the extent that you follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ. Fahmt? So meaning that if you're not following the Prophet ﷺ and you're trying to make change, and you don't have the correct understanding, you don't have the correct state of heart, what kind of change are you actually bringing? You could actually cause more problems. And there could be things that need change. So it doesn't mean that you wait till you're 7 years old to try to bring about change, but you first and foremost learn the basics of your deen. This is the number one priority. And then as we said, from that platform, is it because you are now, and then even if you, after you learn the individual obligations, the only way that you're going to really be able to change things is you've changed yourself. You are changed in and of yourself. And the more that you transform and change internally, the more that you're going to be able to affect change externally. So this is the understanding of our deen. This is how they've understood it before Imam al-Ghazali, during his time, and after his time, throughout these centuries. And when it's all said and done, it's all said and done, and you're on your deathbed and you're about to die and meet your Lord, and then what happens in the hereafter? We would have wished that we would have followed this guidance. These great scholars throughout the ages who are still with us on the face of this earth, who are giving us guidance on how to navigate the issues of our time. You will see there will be a lot of trends that come and go. And most of these trends have a shelf life. Is that there's a methodology that exists of the Quran and the Sunnah that has been understood by the great scholars of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And then there's nuanced scholarly methodologies that there's a diversity in them, all of which are valid. So the school that you all are studying has teachers that have everybody's methodology ultimately is the Quran and Sunnah, but then there's some that unique aspects of a methodology within the different scholarly chains of transmission, all of which are accepted and good and needed even to that extent for the ummah. But you'll realize is that the way of these people, and that only modifying it to the extent that it's needed with their consultation in your context is the way forward. So it doesn't mean that it's static, because sometimes you have to cater to new needs that arise. But the methodology is such that it can do that, but it has to be done carefully and that in consultation, because there's also things that we don't think about. That this is the whole purpose of having elders, of having people that have been there, done that. They've seen things come and go. They've seen different tendencies. They give us advice. And this is important. So these are the etiquettes of the person of knowledge. And then he'll go on to speak about now that where we're at, we're all students, so the etiquette of the student.
If you are a student, then the manners of a student with the teacher are to be the first to greet and offer the salutation of peace, not to speak too much in his presence, not to speak unless asked something by the teacher, not to ask questions without first seeking permission, not to say in contradiction to what he has said, so-and-so, e.g. another scholar, says something different from what you say, not to point out something contrary to his opinion, thinking himself more learned than the teacher, not to whisper to another student in his gathering, not to look around, but rather to sit with good manners, eyes downcast as though in ritual prayer, not to burden him with questions when he is tired or weary, to stand when he stands out of respect, not to follow him from the gathering, talking to him and asking him questions, not to ask him questions on the way to his home until he reaches there and grants permission, and not to form a bad opinion of him regarding actions that appear outwardly to be blameworthy, for he knows better about his own personal affairs. Let the student recall the words of Moses to Khidr, peace be upon them both. He said, "Have you made a hole in the boat to drown the owners of it? Indeed, you have done a peculiar thing." Mistaken was he in his condemnation of Khidr's actions, because he relied on their outward appearance.
So there's a lot more that could have been mentioned here in terms of the etiquette of the student. It's probably better to speak about the context of these types of etiquettes. And there was a whole process before someone was actually accepted as a student, that you would go through the basic schools and then kind of move on to the higher schools. And there was a natural filtration process because there were so many people learning. And I remember our teachers that always used to say is that we wouldn't have been accepted to even sweep the floors in previous times. Like we wouldn't even been able to find a position to sweep the floor, let alone to actually be a student. And on one hand, that knowledge was always open to the public. People could come in and like audit classes like we called it in our time. That door was always been open. But the standard for students of knowledge was much higher. And this is needed especially for ulum naqliya, transmitted knowledge, especially. There's an adab that goes along with it. In other words, is that you can't really study the sacred law and the Islamic sciences without adab. You have to have adab. And there's a number of different etiquettes that are important. All of these right here don't necessarily 100% apply to our particular context. That context here is one of more, at most, kind of like older brothers or older sisters for their female teachers teaching that even if they're not actually younger than them, but like they're teaching their younger brothers or sisters. So that's the context of that. Us is more like that. So, some of these things in a traditional setting might have been implemented in a certain way. These things don't necessarily apply as they are here. But the source of them, the root of them, the heart of them apply, which is one of adab. Right? And that it's perfectly fine to ask questions, and that some people might, when they hear these certain things, think certain things that you can't do. Like if someone's questioning something, that in our time there's so many different ideas out there that it's likely that people are not going to understand everything that they hear. So we encourage people to ask questions, and sometimes those questions are more appropriate privately than they are publicly, but we encourage people to ask. You don't understand something, ask. You don't understand why something is, ask. And we'll do our best to clarify. And because there's such a competition for people's minds in our time, and people, especially if they are well educated, have been exposed to all different types of ideas. Some of them, or many of them, are actually poisonous, which makes it that much more difficult the more we get trapped in the modern lens to understand that traditional religious sciences, and especially the transmitted ones amongst them. So here that the key is that we are people of etiquette. There is definitely an etiquette in the class. We should always be in a state of wudu. We should always be attentive. This is not a time to pull out a subha and to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not a time to check someone's phone. This is not a time to fidget. This is a time, to the extent possible, that we're present and we're aware and we're focusing completely. Muhakala. And then that put everything else in its proper way. That definitely, that if the teacher's in a hurry, then that might not be the best time if someone has a really important question, but arrange another time, find another time where you know that they are able to ask those questions in whatever form, form that might be. Muhakala. So then we have the etiquette of the child with his parents. Bismillah.
If you have parents, then the manners of the child with the parents are to listen to what they say, to stand up when they stand, out of respect, to submit to doing what they say, not to walk ahead of them, not to raise your voice over theirs, to answer them when they call you, to be intent upon seeking their good pleasure, to lower to them the wing of humility, not to remind them of your goodness toward them, nor the fact that you are taking care of their affairs for them, not to look at them askance, not to frown in their faces, and not to travel except with their consent. Know that...
Okay. So these are some of the etiquettes of the children. Now he's just listing these off. If we were discussing this as a topic, we would approach it in a little bit more full way. But he's just listing the etiquettes. Okay? And so that the whole point here is that every person that we can interact with, there's an etiquette, or is an etiquette that is a part of that. Or you can even speak of it in the plural. There are etiquettes that we should have. Excuse me. And that's definitely the case with the child with his parents because of the severity of the haqq of the parent, of the right of the parent over the child. And so he says, if you have parents who are still alive, then the manners of the child with his parents are to listen to what they say. So again, we see these things breaking down in modern society. We should listen to our parents. And we all know exactly what that means, right? Is that we should listen to their advice, we should understand their experience. And this is given that parents are also being the way that parents are supposed to be. Unfortunately, we live in a time where so many parents are not good parents, or sometimes they're toxic parents. And to the extent that that exists is to the extent that the rulings will be adopted for those particular situations. So let's leave that aside, although you can't really leave it aside because so many people experience that. But let's just talk about it in a normal situation, say, where that someone's parents are being the parents that they should be. Is that at a basic level, we should listen to what they say. Stand up when they stand out of respect. So someone sitting there on the couch and their parents, walk in. And again, it doesn't have to every time they walk out of the room, but if your parents, you haven't seen them and they walk in the room, so you don't just sit there and keep doing what you're doing. You acknowledge them. And that one should stand up for them, out of that respect. Now, if someone's, again, their family's like hanging out together, you don't have to do that every time they come in the room, right? You want to be natural and normal with it. If it's a situation that requires respect, yes, stand up. Especially the first time that you see them, that your parents just come to your house. And you don't get up from your couch, hey, come on in. It's your parents, and you stand up, greet them, that type of thing. Right? Then they might go into another room and then come back, and then it might be appropriate to not stand in that case. But this is to feel it out and to know what is proper. Nor to walk ahead of them. So unless that there's some reason that you're walking ahead of them, they want you to because you know where to go or something like that, then that's fine. And you're leading them somewhere or something like that. But as a general rule, we should have adab with these things and to not intentionally walk ahead of them. That's in traditional society considered to be bad adab. Definitely, this is a for sure. Even if our parents aren't being the parents that they should, do not raise your voice over theirs. Khalas. We never raise our voice to our parents. So that's a no-no. Never raise your voice to your parents. And in fact, that you should never speak with attitude to your parents, even again if they're not being the parents that they should. That nor should you ever address them in an inappropriate way. They're your parents. Khalas. This is a big one. And this is one, regardless of how our parents are and the way they're doing, if they're doing what they should be or not. Your parents, you got to have adab and control yourself. And to answer them when they call you, even to the extent that if you're in prayer, and it's a recommended prayer, and you think that they call you, and if you know that they need you, you break the prayer and go to them. If they're just kind of calling you where you can just finish quickly and then attend to their needs, fine. But if you think they really need you, you break your prayer. You break your prayer to go attend to your parents. And I remember learning from a Maliki Sheikh where in the Maliki school, after you enter into the prayer, it's wajib, it's an obligation for you to finish your prayer after you start it, even if it's a recommended prayer to begin with. Whereas in the Shafi school, you could break your prayer, okay, if you want to, although it's makruh without a reason or without a need of some sort. But I remember this teacher saying, because of the great right of the parents, even in the Maliki school, he would advise his students that if the parents really need you, that you break your prayer. As for if you're in an obligatory prayer, you keep praying. If you think that they really need you, though, that you speed up your prayer without any deficiencies in it, and then you go to them immediately. And to this extent, even when we're in prayer. So what about outside of that? And it's anyone who, inshallah, some of you have kids, maybe many of you will have kids, inshallah, moving forward, is that kids seem to have selective hearing. right? Is that Fulan, you call them out. Because they know that you're going to ask them to do something. Fulan, radio silence, where? Fulan. But if it's something that they want and it's the same voice, Fulan, marhaba, hala, they hear you right away. It's amazing the selective hearing of children. And so that if you can hear your parents calling you, that don't act like you don't hear them, right? Especially in either case, whether it's something you want or whether it's something that you don't want to do, khalas, that you should respond to them regardless. Hakada. And be intent upon seeking their good pleasure. Try to be a good son or a good daughter, even if you don't have the best parent. Be a good son, be a good daughter. And that try to ask them, especially if they get older, just, are you content with me? Inshallah, you're happy with me. Forgive me for everything. You want your parents to be pleased with you. Rida Allahi fi rida al-walidain. The contentment of Allah and the contentment of parents. Not to remind them of your goodness toward them. You're not supposed to do that for anyone, let alone your parents. Like, you're going to remind your parents of the goodness you did for them? What about you when you were a little baby who was absolutely dependent upon them? Subhanallah. Hakada. Nor of the fact that you are taking care of their affairs for them. As they get older, they're going to need help. There's going to be certain things they're not able to do. And that's one of the most noble things that someone can do, is to be in the service of their parents as they get older. And make that intention, in fact, that, Ya Allah, I want to come close to you through service of my parents, especially as they get older. And I ask you, Allah, to facilitate that for me, so that I can be in their service when they get older. It's one of the most noble things that we can do, the most honorable things that we can do. And it's hard, because especially when, if they start to get dementia or something, or they reach a certain age where they get irritable, this type of thing, where that even you're doing everything you can to help them, but they'll say things and do things that they don't even know they're doing it. It's just they're older. It just happens. Anyone who's been around older people know that this happens. You have to just tolerate that and bear it. And no, that's not really them. They don't really mean those types of things. But we live in a time where now so many people, boom, they're out of the house so quickly. Everyone's on their own, living in their own areas, in their own houses, and people forget. And alhamdulillah, we're much better off in the Muslim community than we are in the greater community. But these are things that we want to really bring back to life and understand their importance. Because if someone comes to study at Al-Maqasid or any seminary for that purpose, but they don't treat their parents better, they're not showing more respect to their parents don't see the increased adab in them, they've missed the whole point. What worth is memorizing books of fiqh and that ahkam of nahu and grammar and so forth if it's not showing in who we are and how we are with our parents? This is this is why we've always said is that the number one praise that could be given for any student that is associated with this institution is someone says, oh, that's a person of good adab. Their adab has changed. Right? By now, even if you're a year one student, your parents should have seen it when they see you. They notice the change in you. Is that how you are, the way that you speak to them, the way that you take care of them, that so forth. They should see the change in you. This is one of the most important benchmarks, if you will, or ways of knowing if a student is learning what it is that they said. We're going to be different in terms of academically smart and test scores that we get and so forth. But everybody needs to be a person of adab. And not only our parents, this is how the greater community should see us, and people should that notice the differences in us if we spent time in a learning institution like this for a period of time. Well, hakada. Nor look at them askance, like you don't frown at your parents or look at them and like that's oh my goodness. And I would advise, so to me, my principle, I agree with Dr. Leonard Sachs, lovingly strict. That's the type of parent you want to be. The Collapse of Parenting for future parents, that's what I would read, The Collapse of Parenting. There's a lot of parenting methods and books out there, but that would be the one I'd recommend. And the principle is lovingly strict. And kids need boundaries. Right? You are harming them in the future if you don't set up boundaries, if you don't give them chores, if you don't treat them like a child, right? And nowadays is that some parents like put their children on like pedestals, and they cause so many problems for them. The way that they just dance around them and dress them up and take pictures of them. Oh, my little princess or my little prince and this type of thing. And it's almost like it's too much. Yani. Yes, it doesn't mean that you have them wear rags and that you don't take pictures and things like that. But yani, little by little, right? Like it's, it's too much the way that sometimes parents do this nowadays. And it shows, and look at the attitude that kids then have towards their parents. I mean, just look at the common person in this society, in public. Oh my goodness. The way they treat their parents, the things they say to their parents. I mean, this is really strange for people who didn't really grow up around a lot of non-Muslims. How many non-Muslim friends do you have that call their parents by their first name? Right, like, you can, like, you're saying, like, could you ever imagine doing that? Like, you probably don't even know your grandmother and grandfather's real name. Like, exactly. Like, my wife didn't know her grandmother's real name until she passed away and saw it written on the grave. Because it's like, you don't call them by you don't even know their first name. Bibi John, khalas. That's how we refer to her, right? Which is beautiful, right? Gul Mama, different ways of referring, these beautiful ways of referring to them, right? And all the different, this is the way that it's supposed to be, right? But it's amazing, the amount of uquq, a'udhu billah, the feeling impiety and just sheer disobedience that's out there. وهكذا. And not to travel except with their consent. It's a good idea that every time you travel, talk to your parents, get their blessings, tell them where you're going, this type of thing. وهكذا. No. Now, it doesn't mean that this is opening the door for the parent to micromanage their children. That's a whole other thing, right? And then you get into the detailed legal rulings when it comes to those things. But the point here is that balance, and parents should help their children also, that be obedient to them and to be good to them and so forth. And that a parent that just demands their rights and then kind of, puts their children in very difficult situations, that's not the way to be. What we want is to... the goal of a parent is to nurture the fitrah, the natural disposition in the child, and to help position them to be successful in life based upon their God-given gifts and their own inclinations. It's to give them the right way to be able to thrive in this world and the hereafter. That's really the parent's job, not to force them to be a certain way, how you want them to be. Okay, now, in that there's a spectrum. If they're doing things that are wrong and there's no room for it in the Sharia, that's different. Then there's other ways that we have to approach that and so forth. But again, anyhow, there's a lot of details there. But these are the basic etiquettes of the child with his parents. Okay, so now he says, he's going to say here, I'm just going to read this and then you can read. Know that after the categories above, which is the etiquette with our parents, the etiquette of the student, the etiquette of the scholar, the rest of people who have relations with you fall into three further categories. Friends and brothers, yani, is one. Acquaintances and people you do not know. So, now this is not a book on huquq, because we talk about rights. It overlaps with the discussion of adab, of manners and etiquette, but not fully. That if we talk about the rights of a Muslim, there's a long list of rights that we'd give them. The rights of the neighbor. There's also an idea of rights. So he's focusing more on the standpoint of adab and etiquette. So now he's going to talk about other people. So here's where we're going to do a little bit of reading, and we'll comment briefly on these, because he's going to mention here that many duties that we have, and the traits that we should look for. Actually, he's going to speak about two duties. But then he's going to talk about traits that we should look at in our friends. Okay, bismillah.
People you do not know. When you are tested with people you do not know of the general public, the etiquette of sitting with them entails avoiding getting involved in their conversations or discussions, not paying too much attention to their disquieting talk, disregarding what follows on from the bad things they say, being wary of meeting with them too often or getting into a position where you are in need of them, in calling their attention to their blameworthy actions with a gentleness and sincerity when there is hope that they will accept what you say.
Okay, so these are people we don't know. And on some of the books of the sciences of Tasawwuf, you hear that if you don't know someone, then don't try to get to know them. Yani, what we really want is balance. And, there's different people. Some people are introverts, some people are extroverts, and naturally that some people like to go to large gatherings, other people dread going to large gatherings. Some people thrive off going to large gatherings, other people come back from large gatherings totally drained and need a vacation from people. You'd be surprised. Temperaments are very real in this regard, and people are very different. And so there's all of this has to be understood with its nuances. And what we want ultimately is balance, but the balance takes a different form for different people. On one extreme, is that to completely avoid people is not really possible, but then to that always be with people is also not the best idea. What we want is middle ground, and for someone that might be here, for someone else it might be here, for someone else it might be here. If someone's sanguine, that naturally they're going to thrive with being around people. They're going to want to around you. They're going to have a lot of friends. They're going to meet a lot of different people. If someone is more melancholic, they're the opposite. They're going to be kind of more introvert. They're not going to want to be around a lot of people. They're not going to be that one person who wants to accompany you to that fundraiser or that big event or something like that. And you'll even see this with couples. Like, how many times with marriage counseling do you do this? Like, I don't want to do this, but she doesn't want to do this, or I want to do this, but he doesn't want to do this. And all it takes is a knowledge of the temperaments. And it's not that, the problem is that we think that they don't want to do it because of something to do with me. No, it's just how they are, right? And it's, when it comes to these things, you can't force someone to be outside their temperament. And someone should be a little bit open, but someone else should also respect the other. That's the balance, that we want here, with friends, with spousal relationships, and so forth. وهكذا. And so, in relation to people you don't know, he's not speaking here from a da'wah perspective. As from a da'wah perspective, is that our goal should be to help anyone and everybody. And so the foundation of our relationship with other people is one of nasiha, wanting good for them, sincere advice, and helping them that come to know Allah and become Muslim if they're not already Muslim, or if they're already Muslim, that helping them draw closer to Allah Ta'ala. And then taking care of everybody's that material needs across the board. That, in other words, we want to benefit people. So this should be, he's speaking just solely in terms of etiquette, but you could put it in its broader context in the way that was just mentioned. We should actively try to meet people that we don't know, but in a principled way, but also that's balanced, right? And making sure that we have time for other things that we do in terms of our own worship and so forth and so on. Okay? And he says, when you are tested with people, because that being around people is a test. Being around people is a test. But as our Prophet said, whoever mixes with people and is patient is better than someone who doesn't mix with people and thus doesn't have to be patient. So avoid getting involved in their conversations or discussions. Yani being a fuduli and just, chatter and just, wanting to be a part of everything. Right? That's not a good idea. Okay? And not paying too much attention to their disquieting talk. Okay? So that what's called a taghaful, just kind of overlooking things. And especially if it's related to something of the world. It's amazing how people like something that doesn't mean anything. But someone has knowledge about something, people start arguing over something. And I remember one time we were with one of our teachers and two of our brothers. We were going somewhere. And one of them was Egyptian. And the other one wasn't. And he was telling them, they had a discussion about the pharaohs, right? Like, who cares about like the pharaohs, right? And then one of them got offended and like, you Western people are trying to tell me we know our Egyptian history, right? He's like making a point about the pharaohs, and he's like, no, this is actually what happened. So they were like, and then our teacher said like, who cares? Why are you debating the issue like that? Like, and it's creating discord between you. In other words, you can discuss something part of the history of the pharaohs and this type of thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But like, why are you like getting overly riled up about what someone else says about the pharaohs? Like, who cares, right? Whether you're from Egypt or somewhere else. And then why is the brother being so bothered by the Egyptian brother who's telling him that another way of viewing that piece of history and so forth? The point is, like, why are you getting upset about that? There's no need to do that. And we don't even argue with people in terms of our deen. Clarify, yes. Clarify what you know to be the truth of your deen, but don't get into argumentation, let alone in terms of dunya. Who cares? Right? It's not something that we should even be arguing over. Right? So again, these are just general principles that will help us. Okay? Disregarding what follows on from the bad things they say. Okay? I mean, that you don't take part in that, but the whole point is that sometimes the best way to deal with the situation is to ignore it. At-taghaful, just ignore it. And there's times where you speak out and correct people, right, when they say something bad about someone or something like that. But if they just say certain things, sometimes better just move on, subtly change the topic or something like that. No. Being wary of meeting with them too often or getting into a position where you're in need of them. Okay, so again, is that everything's a balance. And all of us will have a certain number of super close friends, and then acquaintances, and then people that we don't know. And those numbers might specifically differ for each person, but the whole point is that have balance in your life and keep it real. Don't act like you like someone more than you really do, and just put everything in its proper place, but while having a good opinion of everybody, wanting good for everybody. In calling their attention to the blameworthy actions with gentleness and sincerity when there's hope that they will accept what you say. So that's in the when people are doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Gentleness and that with sincerity wanting good for them. Okay, so now he's going to switch to brothers and friends. Okay, before entering into such a relationship, you must do two things. So there's people that you don't know. And again, we said that the foundation there is one of da'wah, wanting good for people, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim. And even if they don't accept Islam, is that we want to take care of everybody's needs here in this world, okay? Then you have, after that, your acquaintances, which he's going to speak about, I believe, at the end here. He's going to speak about acquaintances, so that's coming. So then what do we do about our brothers and our friends? Okay, so our close sisters, our close brothers, our friends. He's saying that we must do two things in relation to these people. Okay? The first duty.
To check for the presence of the requisite qualities of companionship and friendship, for you should not take as a brother one who is not fit for brotherhood. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, "A person's religious life is only as good as that of his friend, so let each one of you consider well whom he befriends." If you seek a companion to be your partner in learning and your friend in the matters of your religious life and your worldly life, look for 5 qualities in him.
Okay, so this is a very important principle. So again, we have a good opinion of everyone. We want good for everybody. But it is a part of the sunnah to be wise about who you let close. And there's degrees to which that you will let some people close. So it's a mistake to have your doors shut where you don't let anyone close. Our Prophet said, "La khayra fi man la ya'laf wa la yu'laf." There's no good in someone who doesn't befriend others or allow himself to be befriended. Now the problem is in our society, so many people have been burnt. They're worried in that wolf-like society in which we live that people are going to take advantage of them. And there's reason for that, unfortunately. So we have to be careful. But as a general rule, is that we want to have that balance between being overly friendly or underly friendly, just the right amount. But it is good to be careful about who you let to be closer to you. Make sure people prove themselves to you. Because if you let people too close too quickly, or they're really not the right people to bring close, is that it could bring about some harm on yourself. And that's not what our deen teaches us. What we want is to find that balance. And then there will be people who we could have brought them closer because they were deserving of it, but we didn't, and then we miss out as a result, because that could have been a very good relationship that we and they benefit from. So what we want is a balance. But definitely it's a good practice to learn that wisdom. Some people are better than others. Some people are just very innocent, very naive. And they let people close to them, boom, they get burned, and then they're hurt. And it's hard to get them open up again. And then there are people who just have everybody in arms, like they just don't let anyone get close to them. And that's not really the sunnah. What we want is to find that balance, and to, with the understanding of temperament that we mentioned, is that to the right people that we want to bring closer and closer to us, and then that the virtue of having brothers and sisters, brothers, sisters, friends for the sake of Allah Ta'ala, is immense, immense. And it suffices just to look at that. I mean, it's an amazing hadith Qudsi. Wajabat mahabbati, my love is guaranteed for those who love each other for my sake. Amazing. Like if you can have a relationship where you love someone for Allah's sake, Allah, it's a means for you to become beloved to Allah. I mean, it's amazing if you think about that, right? But not everybody is fit to be like that with you. One person could be fit like that, be like with someone else, but not you. And inshallah, that works out for them. And then there's other people that might be fit for that too, worked out with hakada. And in our time, to have one person like that is a huge blessing. One person. And if someone has that door open up for a few people, that's one of the greatest blessings of all. Right? So alhamdulillah, it's easier when you're in these more remote places like where we all are here, where there's a lot of people who moved here that are like-minded, who have the same understanding of the deen. It's facilitated from the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one of the great pluses. A place like this requires patience in other ways, not just because of the weather and the snow and stuff like that, but there's other things that we don't have some of the amenities that someone else might have if they're in a bigger city. But there's also pluses. So everything is weighs out in one way or the other in the end. Anyhow, so he's going to talk about the 5 traits. Okay, now it doesn't mean this is a checklist and be like, how intelligent are you? You have to take this test before you come hang out with me. All right, no, it's just you naturally develop wisdom where you notice these things, right? Oh, you're not intelligent enough for me. So you better go find another friend that's like as dull-witted as you are. No, you don't say that to people or hurt people's feelings like that. But, you want to be careful, because you will have friends that aren't the smartest people. And if you bring them too close, they could actually harm you, sometimes worse than your enemies, because they want to help you, but they just don't have the ability to do so. So you got to have wisdom. Develop wisdom. Our deen doesn't teach us to be naive. Our Prophet ﷺ he would smile at everybody, but he would smile at everybody, ﷺ, but he was wise in his interactions, right? And that he would be good to everybody, smile at everybody, but be very careful who he brought close to him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Maybe it wouldn't state it like that. He would be wise in how his dealings would probably be a better way. The first one is intellect.
There is no good in friendship with a foolish person, for such friendship will only end in estrangement and breaking off relations. This person may even harm you while intending to bring you benefit, for an intelligent enemy is sometimes better than a foolish friend. So
Imam Ghazali is very intense. I wouldn't say there's no good, you just have to be wise, right? Again, and I'm not correcting Imam Ghazali, I'm just bringing it into our time and where people are really at. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to put that into practice.
Ali radiallahu anhum said, "Do not befriend an ignorant person. Let both you and him beware, for how many an ignoramus has brought to ruin. A gentle, forbearing man when he befriended him. A person is measured by the company he keeps, like one pair of shoes placed next to another. Everything is evaluated by comparison to its peer. A heart will reflect the reality of the heart it keeps company with."
No. So the first thing is intelligence. This is a good thing. Again, this is not necessarily an SAT score or an IQ test. That's part of intelligence, but it also includes the other types of intelligence. Right? Awareness, social intelligence, emotional intelligence, different types of intelligence. Is that it can happen that if you have a friend, but they're just not the most intelligent person in any of those ways, is you tell them something and then what they do with it comes out to actually harm you, or they perceive something, and then what happens from that situation that comes to harm you. So just to be on alert, okay? And these are a mechanism to be a little bit careful who we let to be closer to us, right? And this is the wise thing, to be careful about who we let to be closer. Anyway, because the closer someone is to you, the more vulnerable you are. But so you want to make sure that those are the right people. Anyway.
Good character. Do not be friends with a person of bad character. That is, someone who cannot restrain his anger or control his desire. Al-Qama al-Mu'taridi, may Allah have mercy on him, summarized the traits... Al-Utaridi, may Allah have mercy on him, summarized the traits of good character in the counsel he gave to his son when he was near to death. O my son, if you wish to befriend someone, take as your friend a person who, if you serve him, protects and preserves you. If you spend time with him, beautifies you by his company, and if you are in financial need, provides for you. Take as your friend one who, if you extend your hand towards something good, assists you in it. If he sees you do something good, appreciates and remembers it, but if he sees you doing something bad, stops you from doing it. Take as your friend one who, when you say something, believes you, when you attempt something, accepts your leadership, and if you should dispute about something, prefers you to himself.
MashaAllah. That's a very beautiful advice there. Allahu Akbar. Look at those qualities. If you serve him, protects and preserves you. No. If you spend time with him, beautifies you by his company. There's benefit in it. And if you're in financial need, takes care of you. Take as your friend one who, if you extend your hand towards something good, assists you in it. If he sees you doing something good, appreciates and remembers it. But if he sees you doing something bad, stops you from doing it. So a good friend is the one who's going to give you the right advice. I really don't think you should do that. Right? I know you want to do that, but I'm not just going to tell you to do it just because you want to do it. Right? Hakada. Take as your friend one who, when you say something, believes you. Of course, that you want them to believe you. When you attempt something, accepts your leadership. Okay? وَإِذَا حَاوَلْتَ أَمْرًا أَمَرَكَ. No. And if you should dispute about something, prefers you to himself. And the Adi said in poetic form, oh, this is one of my favorite lines of poetry. إِنَّ أَخَاكَ الْحَقَّ مَنْ كَانَ مَعَكَ وَمَنْ يُضُرُّ نَفْسَهُ لِيَنْفَعَكَ وَمَنْ إِذَا رِيبُ الزَّمَانِ صَدَّعَكَ شَتَّتَ فِيهِ شَمْلَهُ لِيَجْمَعَكَ. Allah. Verily, your true brother is he who is really with you, who will harm himself in order to benefit you, and who, when the troubles of the time break you, will shatter himself to pieces in order to gather you together. Allah. La ilaha illallah. Where are those people? Well, they're few and far between. But if you find someone like that, subhanAllah. Alhamdulillah, there's people that are like that. Still alive today, subhanAllah. There's people who are like that. Verily, your true brother is who is really with you, man kana ma'ak. Right? And everything is that you go through, and all of your different ups and downs, and everything that you experience. Ma'ak. He's with you. وَمَنْ يُضُرُّ نَفْسَهُ لِيَنْفَعَكَ, who will openly, happily, willingly harm himself in order to benefit you. They'll put themselves in danger for you. They will put themselves in financial difficulty for you. They'll put their reputation on the line for you. Hakada. And who, when the troubles of time break you, وَمَنْ إِذَا رَيْبَ الزَّمَانِ صَدَّعَكَ. Right? صَدَّعَ. Yes, you صَدَّع is really just to break you into pieces. The troubles of time break you into pieces. What does he do? شَتَّتَ فِيهِ شَمْلَهُ لِيَجْمَعَكَ. So all the difficulties you're going through is like, look at the metaphor, just shattered you completely. You're just a number of broken pieces. And what does he do? That shattat fi shamli yajma' will shatter himself to pieces in order to gather you together. And again, these people are few and far between, but alhamdulillah, they still exist. Imagine how people who truly love each other for Allah Ta'ala's sake. And that has a whole book in the Ahya about this topic, where you start to realize the conditions of this become very intense, rigorous. But that there's degrees, of course. وهكذا. And then uprightness. We'll just end on this one for today.
Do not befriend a wrongdoer who persists in committing a major transgression, because someone who fears Allah would not persist in committing major transgressions. As for someone who does not fear Allah Most High, you cannot be safe from his danger. Indeed, such a person changes as his objectives
So he
change.
translates as do not befriend. I would probably not translate that like that here. In Arabic, it's wala tashab. Do not take as a companion. Right? Meaning is that if we have to have relationships with people who are not doing right. Right? But if someone's not living right and they're consistently doing certain sins, there's only a degree to which that you can keep them close to you. You should still have a relationship with them. You should still touch base with them. You should still wish good for them. You should still extend your hand to help you. But the principle is as follows. You can never help someone else if it means you are going to get harmed in the process. Okay? In other words, we should try to help everybody as a baseline. But there's certain people we're just unable to help for some reason. Okay? So you can't try to help people that you just simply can't help, because then you're going to cause more problems. But you can make dua for them. You can direct them to someone who might be able to help them. Okay? So again, as a baseline, we want to help everybody. But there's certain people we're just unable to help. Okay? And then there's other people who, that no matter how much you want to help them, they don't want to help themselves. So again, there's only so much you can do, other than just to try to point them in the right direction, and to. So there's people that we're just unable to help. Then there's people that they themselves don't want to be helped. Okay, and then there's people who. That we can help, but in the process we might harm ourselves. Okay? And when it reaches, we help them to the extent where we ourselves are going to be harmed. Okay, so I know people who, for instance, that are professionals, that counselors and these types of things, where they do appointments for 2 weeks and they have to take a whole week off because of what they're bearing in terms of what they hear from people. They have to take time off for themselves. And any time that you take for yourself to do your own upkeep, and there's care for the caretaker, so that you can help other people, is not being selfish. And there's degrees. Some people need more time than others. But you have to be careful. You have to take care of yourself. And when you, as we've been encouraged you thus far to, spend your life helping people, yes, but you also have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of your spiritual health, you have to take care of your own mental health, and you have to take care of your own physical health. On all three fronts, you have to take care of yourself. Burnout is real. It could happen to people. And you have to keep up with your awrad. You have to keep up with your studies. You have to keep up in being in touch with your teachers. That's the foundation. And then in relation to mental health, which really overlaps in this sense with physical health, it's really important to exercise. It's really important to have proper diet. It's really important to get proper rest. It's really important to relax at certain times. The foundation is we work hard, but then there's times we have to relax. You can't just keep going. The goal is to be able to serve this deen for the next 10, 15, 20, 30, 50, 60, however long we live, years. But it needs a tartib. You have to put everything in its proper place. And people talk about helping other people. People rarely talk about caring for the caretakers. Anyone's ever seen someone who's in that position where they have to care for someone, especially in a life situation, it's really hard. They really struggle. They need a lot of support. And so the point here is that we are going to have relationships with people who might be doing certain things that are not the best, but we can't take part in that or to act like we don't notice that, meaning that we don't do that wrong with them. You can still have a relationship in certain ways, but when those things come to the surface, khalas, is that we just have to advise people hakada. So we need wisdom in how we place everything. But the closer that people get to us is that we should make sure that there's uprightness. Okay, and then our Prophet said, I would translate this. Where was it? Where did that come before? Aywa. Hakada. Okay, keep going.
Allah Azza wa Jalla said to His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Do not obey someone whose heart we have made heedless of our remembrance, who follows his inclinations, whose case has gone beyond all bounds." So you must be wary of friendship with a wrongdoer, for witnessing wrongdoers and their transgressions on a regular basis will remove from your heart all sense of their enormity and make them seem insignificant.
Aywa.
This is why the crime of backbiting has become acceptable to people's hearts and is taken lightly. If people were to see a gold ring or silk garment being worn by a religious jurist, they would strongly disapprove of it. Yet backbiting is a much more serious offense than that.
Aywa. So this is the thing, is that if we just see people right before our eyes doing wrong, at first we're like, no, that's wrong. But if someone keeps doing it, it reaches the point where we get used to it, and we might even think that, oh, it's not that serious. No, if it's a sin, it's serious. And so the point here is that I mentioned that nuance because, again, there will be people in our society. We have family members, we have friends that are caught up in doing certain things. And the purpose of this is not to learn from this, is that, okay, I'm not going to have any relationship with that person. No. You have a relationship built upon you trying to help them, okay? And that direct them towards good. And anything that you do with them for that purpose, khair, it's good. As long as you're not being harmed or being drawn into what it is that they're doing. And that can happen to someone where they're trying to help someone, but then they get drawn into the way that that person is. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq, ya arhamar rahimin. That are there any questions? We haven't been able to answer any questions to read. So is there any questions anyone has? We took quite a bit today. MashaAllah. No questions, brothers, sisters? I mean, you don't have to have a question. If you have a question, and I wasn't like making you ask questions, but.
It's not necessarily related to the class itself.
Oh, okay.
Let's say for tonight, what would you suggest that we do? Because from our understanding, it's a very special night.
Yep.
So what should we do to make it close to it?
Yeah, so tonight is the latest Nisf Sha'ban. We'll have a tartib here after Maghrib, so all the students should be here with us after Salat al-Maghrib. We'll be reciting Yasin 3 times, one each time with a specific intention. And this is a night we want to bring to life with worship, so that to the extent that we can, we want to at very least make sure we pray Isha and Fajr in congregation. And we'll have a short tartib here before Salat al-Fajr. We'll do the adhkar and that type of thing, and to that remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala together. And then if you want to have pray tahajjud or an extended tahajjud if you're already praying. And just in general, dhikr and dua, turning your heart to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so salawat, reading Quran, prayer, all these things are good to do on this special night, inshallah. But in a way that do what you can, right? And so that I would probably recommend getting to bed a little bit early and sleeping for a period of time according to your need, and then waking up not before Fajr and in a way that's not going to upset the next day. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. You have the mic, so maybe you can just also sing a brief qasida.
اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد ولا تصحب أخا الجهل وإياك وإياه فكم من جاهل أرضى حليما حين وأخاه يقاس المرء بالمرء إذا ما هو مشاه وللشيء من الشيء مقاييس وأشباه وللقلب على القلب دليل حين يلقاه وللقلب على القلب دليل حين يلقاه والحمد لله رب العالمين.
ربي وفقنا ووفقهم لما ترتدي قولا وفعلا كرما وارزق كل حلالا دائما وخل أتقياء علماء نحظى بالخير ونكفى كل شر ربنا واصلح لنا كل شؤون وقر بالرضا منك العيون واقضي عنا ربنا كل الديون قبل أن تأتينا رسل منون واغفر استر أنت أكرم من ستر وصلاة الله تكشى المصطفى من إلى الحق دعانا والوفاء بكتاب فيه للناس شفاء وعلى آل كرام شرفاء وعلى الصابه وصابه الغرار اللهم اهدنا بهداك وجعلنا من يسارع في رضاك ولا تولينا وليا سواك ولا تجعلنا من خالف أمرك وعصاك وحسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم اعترفنا بأننا اقترفنا وأننا أسرفنا على لظى أشرفنا فتوب علينا توبة تغسل لكل حوبة واستر لنا العورات وآمن الروعات واغفر لوالدينا ربي ومولودينا والأهل والإخوان وسائر الخلان وكل ذي محبة أو جيرة أو صحبة والمسلمين أجمع آمين يا رب فضلا منا لا باكتساب منا بالمصطفى الرسول نهضى بكل سولي رسولي نهضى بكل سولي بالمصطفى الرسول نهضى بكل سولي صلى وسلم ربي عليه عد الحب وآله وصحبه عدا تطش صحبي والحمد للإله في البدء والتناهي حمدا كثيرا دائم محبة النسائم